Hi guys, we are in week 8. Hopefully you finished reading Act 1 last week of The Crucible. Before I get into the announcements and assignments, I want to kind of talk about some things that we saw in Act 1. So this is kind of establishing the whole direction of the play here. So as we talked about, we've got Puritans here, so you've got that sense of, you've seen throughout this whole first Act 1, they are very religious people, right? Everything revolves around religion, and that's why this whole witchcraft thing is such a big deal to them. So the play opens with Paris's daughter. She's like non-responsive, and they are thinking it's witchcraft, because then Mrs. Putnam comes in, and her daughter Ruth is in the same state, non-responsive. She's lost all these babies. Now they're thinking it's witchcraft, because their mindset is God is punishing us, or there's supernatural causes going on here. So that's why witchcraft is such a big deal. You've seen Paris. He's the reverend there, and he holds a key role in the play. But notice how, okay, he's got his daughter who's non-responsive right now, and it seems like he cares a lot more about himself, right? He cares more about how this is going to impact his reputation as the reverend, and less about his daughter, which shows you kind of that another theme we'll see in this story about how reputation is a big deal, and my reputation means a lot, because they all have to be viewed as these good, godly people, and how is my daughter bewitched going to look on me, or whatever. All right, so then we have another character, Abigail, right? And hopefully you've seen kind of how untrustworthy she is. She's talking to Paris, and she's like, oh no, we were just dancing in the woods. And by the end of Act 1, she's admitted to witchcraft, but she switches it and blames it on Tituba, right? So she kind of deflects responsibility, puts it on Tituba, and then creates this hysteria regarding the witchcraft and all these people they've seen with the devil. So, see if there's anything else I want to kind of talk about. I definitely want you guys to pay attention to the whole hysteria rising, how Abigail kind of gets all the other kids. She's kind of like manipulating this whole situation. We also know Abigail is not the most trustworthy person, because she and John Proctor had an affair. There was that scene where Proctor wants to keep it on the down low, right? Because he's concerned once again about his reputation, just like Paris. He's concerned about his reputation. He doesn't want to look like this ungodly person who's had this extramarital affair. But Abigail obviously still has feelings for him, right? So there's that little conflict there, again, surrounding reputation and looking godly. They very much care about appearance. And we saw also how the end of the act went with, it's just like mass hysteria. These girls are like, I saw her with the devil, I saw her with the devil, I saw her with the, and you can see this just like escalating into something crazy, right? So there's like the beginning of this mass hysteria, this conflict that's just gonna be blown out of proportion and go crazy throughout this play. All right, so pay attention to that. You're gonna read Act 2 this week, so prepare to do that. I think Act 2 is a little bit shorter than Act 1, but I'm not totally sure. And again, if you guys want to watch this, that's fine with me, but you do need to be reading some of it, because you guys are going to have to write a script. So I want you to know how to write a script with the character and the colon in their line, or you putting in parentheses or italics the stage directions for that character. So you do need to look at the text in order to know how to do that. But as I said before, plays were meant to be watched, not read. So it's good to see the play as well. In fact, during this week, you will be asked to watch a scene. So we're going to start with Activity 2.7. So pull up Activity 2.7 on your Springboard activities. You are going to think about hysteria, and you're going to fill in this little graphic organizer where you just give me a definition, and then you're going to give me words that you associate with hysteria. So when you think of hysteria, what other words come to mind? And then you're also going to give me some examples. So that's a short little easy thing there. Then you're going to read a couple passages, all right? So you're going to read the Lessons of Salem, and you're going to read A Very Proper Gander. Neither of those is that long, so don't worry. But while you read those, I want you to think about hysteria, all right? Because you're going to see some of that involved in those two pieces. After you read a propaganda, so that is written in prose, that's written in paragraph form. You are going to turn it into a script. So the characters in a propaganda are like geese and ducks and chickens and stuff like that. So you're literally going to have like chicken and then what his dialogue was, and then like some stage directions for the goose and what he does and what he says. All right. So you are going to create, you're going to take that paragraph, that fable that you're going to read, and turn it into a script. Make sure you include stage directions. Make sure you include like in italics how that character would say that line. You're going to have to create some dialogue because the paragraph there doesn't give you enough dialogue. So you might have to create some dialogue. So make sure you do that. I want this to be about 3/4 of a page to a page long. All right. Double space, 12-point font. Don't like go crazy on the font size for me. But this is just going to give you some practice in writing that film script, because that's what you guys are going to have to do for your embedded assessment. All right. So take this story and turn it into a play. Next, you're going to write down some conflicts that we're seeing in the story. All right. So you've already read Act 1. Think about some conflicts. There are many conflicts between Paris and Abigail when he's questioning her about the witchcraft, between Proctor and Abigail when he's like telling her not to tell anybody or to forget about their affair, their relationship. So you're going to just write down 4 different conflicts. So there's a graphic organizer here that you're going to fill in. It just says blank versus blank. So you might put Proctor versus Abigail. And then you tell me the reason for that conflict. They had an affair and he doesn't want it known, or he doesn't want to have anything to do with her anymore. So write down 4 conflicts. You can use that one I just gave you if you would like. Then you're going to write a paragraph picking one of those conflicts. So if you picked the Proctor and Abigail conflict, you could pick that one, and you're going to write a at least 7-sentence paragraph about that conflict and how it contributes to the overall, or how it shows the hysteria in the play, or how important reputation is in the play, or how prevalent intolerance is in the play. So you can pick one of those: hysteria, intolerance, or reputation. Those are pretty much what the underlying issue is in the conflicts that we see. And then you tell me about your conflict and how it shows hysteria, or how it shows the importance of reputation in the play. All right. Make sure you provide text evidence. So you're going to have to find quotes that those characters say, like when John Proctor talks about her not saying anything, how he doesn't want her to say anything. Pull that quote and say, this quote represents intolerance by, and then tell me how it represents intolerance, or how it shows intolerance. All right, so topic sentence, a couple text details with your commentary, and then a conclusion sentence to wrap it all up, telling me how it displays hysteria or intolerance, or the reputations of these people. All right, activity 2.9. When you pull up Springboard activity 2.9, you're going to see a lot of metaphors. So metaphors are just kind of like comparisons. There's some figurative language there. So it lists some metaphors from the text, from the play. So it pulls some metaphors from the play, and then you guys tell me what that metaphor means, and then what it tells us about that character. All right. So the first one here, just to do an example together, Proctor, when he and Elizabeth are talking, and Elizabeth hasn't like forgiven him about the affair. She knows about the affair with Abigail, and she's having a hard time forgiving her husband for cheating on her, right? Of course. So Proctor says, a funeral marches round your heart. So he's comparing how she's treating him to saying a funeral is marching around her heart. Like she just is continually grieving this experience, grieving the affair. And she won't let her heart move on beyond that. That's what that metaphor means. She just can't let it go. She's never going to let it go. And I, quite frankly, don't blame her. So what it reveals about that character, Proctor, what it reveals about Proctor's character is that he thinks his wife should just move on. He thinks his wife should just get over it and be with him and be fine about that. So he doesn't have very much patience for her hurt that he caused. So I would write that on the right-hand column of the graphic organizer. There are more metaphors there from Elizabeth and Proctor and Hale. the nurse, and again, Proctor. So you tell me what those metaphors mean and what they tell us about that character. All right? Now you're going to read Act 2. So do those assignments first and then read Act 2. And you're going to answer for activity 2.10. This is where we're going to kind of look at the rising action of the play. You're going to write a paragraph that shows how, that talks about Mary Warren. So Mary Warren is kind of like a servant in the Proctor home. You're going to think about how her role in the Proctor home versus her role in the courtroom. So she plays a role in both those places. You're going to tell me about her role in both of those places, all right? Specifically regarding the hysteria she creates, okay? So think about hysteria, think about Mary Warren and what she's doing in the Proctor home and what she's doing in the courtroom. How is she creating this hysteria or perpetuating the hysteria in the play? And you're going to write me a paragraph. Again, 7 sentences. So when we do these like 7-sentence paragraphs, it sets you up to write a topic sentence. So tell me how she contributes to the hysteria with the girls. Then you're going to pull a text detail, so pull a line from the play, and then analyze that line from the play. So you might say, when Mary Warren says da 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 da, it shows or it displays or it indicates hysteria by, and then your comments, okay? And then you're going to pull another line from the play and analyze that. Give me your commentary on how that contributes to the hysteria. And then wrap it all up with a conclusion sentence. All right? If you want to add more quotes and more sentences, that's totally fine. So I've got the format there for you to follow there on the announcements too. So you can follow that format and you'll do just fine. Okay. Next, we are going to do Springboard Activity 2.11. This is the last one, okay? So after this, you'll be done. So you should have read Act 2 by now if you're doing this assignment. And you're going to look at these scenes. So we kind of did this last time. We looked at Proctor and Abigail last week and their interactions and the stage, how the stage directions would have given us a different feeling of how their interaction is. Now we're going to look at Proctor and Elizabeth. So when those two are talking, they're talking about Mary and they're talking about Abigail and how Elizabeth still hasn't let go of that. So the very beginning of Act 2. So in my book, if you have the book that looks like this, that interaction between Proctor and Elizabeth at the very beginning of Act 2 lasts a few pages. So read, I've got page 49 here if you've got this book. Page 49 through about, probably about 55-ish, where it's just Proctor and Elizabeth talking until Mary Warren comes in, all right? So think about that, and you're going to think about that scene from a few different perspectives and fill out these graphic organizers, all right? So if Proctor is cold and distant, how would you change the lines? What lines would you include? What would his gestures be if he's cold and distant? What blocking or movements would you do? Would you have him move this way? Would you have him sit on this side of the table and Elizabeth on this other side of the table? How would you block their movement or interaction with one another? What would his facial expressions be if he was cold and distant? So maybe pick a line from the play that he would say with a certain facial expression to indicate that he's cold and distant. And his vocal delivery. Pick a line from the play where you would emphasize a certain word or put a certain tone on a phrase that he has. So you're going to look at the lines from the play and tell me what you would do with that line to make him seem cold and distant. Then fill out that graphic organizer, okay? And then you're going to do the same thing for if Elizabeth is cold and distant. So look at Elizabeth's lines from the play. Pick some lines where you would give her a certain gesture or have her move a certain way or give her a certain facial expression. So you might write that line down in the graphic organizer and tell me the stage directions for it. So I would have her say this line with a solemn tone or looking down at the floor or turning her back to him or something like that. So give me a line from the play and what your stage directions would be for that line. Then you're going to do that for Proctor and Elizabeth being in love. So pick some lines from the story where you could show that they were in love based on your stage direction. So maybe they say these lines to each other while their Proctor goes up and touches her shoulder or something like that while saying this line. And then you're going to create your own interpretation. So maybe your own interpretation, I did one, with Proctor being defensive. So I've got an example here for you. My example was that I was going to portray Proctor as being defensive because he's had this affair, so he's like on the defense about it. So for my line, I wrote, I have gone tiptoe in this house all 7 months since she is gone. That's the line I'm going to create some stage direction around. My gestures for him, his hands waving or his fingers pointing, like I have gone 6 months, or what did it say? I have gone tiptoe in this house 7 months. So he's got some, like, I would say dramatic arm movements there if he's like on the defense. His movements, I would have him approaching Elizabeth in a dominant position, like he's trying to make her back down and get over this. His facial expressions would be some anger or exasperation, like he just cannot believe that she just can't get over this. And his vocal delivery, he's raising his voice as he's saying this. All right. So you do the same thing. You pick a line and attach the gestures to it, the blocking or movements, the facial expressions, and so on. So write the line in the first column of those graphic organizers, and then put your stage directions in the other columns. I'm quoting my line here because I forgot. All right. So then this last piece is where you're going to watch a chunk from the play. So if you don't have access, or if your parents don't want you watching it or whatever, just let me know and we'll figure out an alternative assignment. That's totally fine. But you can like get this on YouTube or Netflix and watch that scene and tell me, after you watch that scene of Elizabeth and Proctor together, what interpretation of the relationship did the director seem to have? So when the director shot the version that you watched, what interpretation did he seem to have? Did he seem to have that they were in love, or that Proctor loved her, or that she's cold and distant? And then how does it compare or contrast to your own interpretation? So when you read that, what was the feeling you got? How do you think they feel toward one another? And how did that relate, or was it different than what you felt? And then how does the director's interpretive choice about this relationship affect the direction or the conflict? So how does their interpretation make the conflict different? Is the conflict as big of a deal, or is it downplayed based on how the director shot the scene? All right, so that's it. Okay, if you have any troubles or if you're struggling to get through this, let me know, because I'm here to help. All right, we can sit down and work through these assignments together if you want. So I'm here for you to help. Just reach out and let me know. All right, and we'll be back next week talking about Act 2 and starting Act 3. All right, take care, guys. Bye-bye.